Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamunatiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtota Siddha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtota Siddha Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 6, Text 47. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gatinantar atmana shradhavan bhajate yo mam sa me yuktatamo Mataha Yoginamapi Sarvesham Madgatinantaratmana Shadhavan bhajate yo mang. Shadhavan bhajate yo mang. Sameyukta tamo mataha. Sameyukta tamo mataha. Yoginam api sarvesham. Madgatinantaratmana. Shadhavan bhajate yo mang. Sameyukta tamo mataha. Yoginam api sarvesham. Madgatinantaratmana. Shadhavan bhajate yo mang. Sameyukta tamo mataha. Please repeat. Bhajate yo mam. Mataji? Yoginam api sarvesham. Atmana. Shadavan bhajate yo mam. Sameyukta tamo mataha. Yoginam, of yogis. Api, also. Sarvesham, all types of. Matgatena, abiding in me, always thinking of me. Anta atmana, within himself. Shadhavan, in full faith. Bhajate, renders transcendental loving service. Yaha, one who. Mam, to me, the Supreme Lord. Saha, he. Me, by me. Yukta tamaha, the greatest yogi. Mataha, is considered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Purport. The word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its root in the verb bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore, to show respect and honor to the worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can avoid worshipping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous, but one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unless every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Failing to do this, he falls down. The Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, Text 3, confirms this as follows. Ya esham purusham sakshad atma prabhavam ishvaram nabhajantya vijananti stanad brashta patantyadaha. Anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. In this verse also the word bhajanti is used. Therefore, bhajanti is applicable to the Supreme Lord only, whereas the word worship can be applied to the demigods or to any other common living entity. The word avajananti, used in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, is also found in the Bhagavad Gita, avajananti mam mudha. Only the fools and rascals deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, without an attitude of service to the Lord. Consequently, they cannot properly distinguish between the word bhajanti and the word worship. The culmination of all kinds of yoga practices lies in bhakti yoga. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of bhakti in bhakti yoga. Yoga actually means bhakti yoga. All other yogas are progressions toward the destination of bhakti yoga. From the beginning of karma yoga to the end of bhakti yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma yoga without fruitive results is the beginning of this path. When karma yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called jnana yoga. When jnana yoga increases in meditation on the supersoul by different physical processes, and the mind is on him, it is called ashtanga yoga. And when one surpasses the ashtanga yoga and comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, it is called bhakti yoga, the culmination. Factually, bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal, but to analyze bhakti yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogas. The yogi who is progressive is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. One who sticks to a particular point and does not make further progress is called by that particular name: karma yogi, jnana yogi or dhyana yogi, raja yogi, hatha yogi, etc. If one is fortunate enough to come to the point of bhakti yoga, it is to be understood that he has surpassed all other yogas. Therefore, to become Krishna conscious is the highest stage of yoga, just as when we speak of the Himalayan, we refer to the world's highest mountains, of which the highest peak, Mount Everest, is considered to be the culmination. It is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of bhakti yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called Shyama Sundar, who is as beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is as effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garlanded. Illuminating all sides is his gorgeous luster, which is called the Brahmajyoti. He incarnates in different forms such as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he descends like a human being as the son of Mother Yashoda, and he is known as Krishna, Govinda, and Vasudeva. He is the perfect child, husband, friend, and master, and he is full with all opulences and transcendental qualities. If one remains fully conscious of these features of the Lord, he is called the highest yogi. This stage of highest perfection in yoga can be attained only by bhakti yoga, as is confirmed in all Vedic literature. Yasya devi para bhaktir yata tevi tatagaro tasyaite katitahyarta prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Bhaktir asya bhajanam tad iha mutropadhi nairasyena musmin mana kalpanam etareva naishkarmyam. Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord, which is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Devoid of such inclinations, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme. That is the purpose of Naishkarmya. Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.15. These are some of the means for the performance of bhakti, or Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of the yoga system. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of dhyana yoga. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dalati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Srivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitams Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tribhyas Chakra Pasandubhye Vichapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshtarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vagisha Yasya Vadane Lakshmi Yasya Chavaksisi Yasyaste hridaye samvittam nasimham aham bhaje. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatinantaratmana shadhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktatamo mataha. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So here we're coming to the culmination of this 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the last few classes, Krishna has been discussing the fate of a yogi that is unsuccessful, he talks about, and just he's progressing on and explaining what this unsuccessful yogi, their fate is. So, I'll just read, starting at text 41, he says, the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Or he takes birth in the family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. A birth such as this is very rare in this world. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress. And he, becomes attracted to the yogic principles even without seeking them, and he stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. And when he engages himself with sincere endeavor, ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he finally attains this supreme goal. And then in the previous verse, Krishna said, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. And it was spoken of last week that Krishna isn't saying be a yogi in the terms of what modern society thinks a yogi is. He's not saying go to your local yoga studio and wear tight clothes and do some stretches. He's saying become a yogi in the true sense of the term, which yoga means to link with the Supreme. So engage all of your activities in relation to the Supreme Lord Krishna. And then, of course, Krishna will go on to describe that in more detail later in the Bhagavad Gita. But we come to this last verse here today, and Krishna is saying that of all the yogis, and we've already described that the yogi is greater than all these other things, the ascetic, the empiricist, and the fruitive worker, the karmis, jnanis, and those who practice this Ashtanga yoga. Of all of these, the yogis are greater than them, and of all of those yogis that are already on this top platform, the one with great faith who always abides in me thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So Krishna is establishing very clearly that this path of bhakti yoga, this path of devotional service, and simply centering our entire lives, our consciousness, our activities 24/7 around being able to think of Krishna and render transcendental loving service to him. This is how we become most intimately united with Krishna and become the highest of all yogis. So this is kind of summarizing, you could say. It summarizes the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita in this one verse in a way. There's many verses like that, of course, Sarvadharman Pratyajam Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. That verse also describes kind of the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita in a way. But this one is encapsulating the entire message that Krishna is giving to Arjuna, that is, always think of me and render service to me. And of course, in Arjuna's situation right there, that looks like engaging in this fight even though he doesn't want to. So it's giving up his own desires, his own material desires, you could say, to have a nice kingdom and have his family and be able to enjoy his kingdom that he's describing earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, giving these things up, putting these things aside, and realizing that his true happiness, his true fulfillment will come from fulfilling the desire of Krishna. And Krishna is very clearly stating that he wants this battle to happen. He's orchestrated the entire thing to happen in this way. And Arjuna simply has to act as an instrument. And by doing this, he will be intimately united with Krishna and will be the highest of all yogis and be able to ultimately always be associated with Krishna and come to him at the time of death. So in the purport here, Prabhupada is explaining that this word bhajate, so in the translation here, word for word, it says, bhajate means renders transcendental loving service. He's saying that this is very significant. So the English word worship, he's comparing it to, and it can't be used in the same way. So we see in so many of the Western religions and faiths and practices that there is a complete emphasis on worship and neglect of service. Growing up in a Christian household, you go to church every Sunday or every couple times a week, and the entire point of going there is that you engage in some kind of service. You sing hymns or whatever, and then you maybe hear a sermon about the Bible, and the entire point is to glorify God and their attempts to glorify Jesus and all these things. But there's no actual point of taking any action practically. It's said that, what is it? Love is, or what is it? Like, action is, I don't know, what is it? Love is, service is love in action, I think. Something like that. Service is like how you show that you love someone. Like, you have a loved one, you don't just like tell them I love you and you're so great and all these things. You want to do things for them. You want to like cook them a nice meal or take them out or, just serve them in some way, make them happy, make them feel like I'm being, cared for. So it's not through just words only and through just mere sentiment and saying something, you have to actually do it. You have to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Prabhupada is hammering on this and really emphasizing this point that we cannot use this in the same way. We can't just think of this as we are just engaging in worship alone, but we're worshiping the Lord through engaging in this transcendental loving service. He's saying that one can avoid worshiping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous. So if you, don't worship someone that's just like a, normal person or a demigod or whatever, at worst you can be called discourteous. It's not that you're getting sent to hell for just not worshiping someone. But if we avoid serving the Supreme Lord and don't acknowledge Him as He is, Prabhupada says here that we will be thoroughly condemned. And this isn't because Krishna is wants to like force us to worship Him or anything like that. It's simply that this is our constitutional position, as it says here. Again, Prabhupada goes on to say this: every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. This is our constitutional position, is to be the servant of and the engaged in this devotional service, this action of worship, you could say, to the Supreme Lord. And this is how we find this actual fulfillment and happiness. And as it says here, failing to do this, he falls down. It's this idea of avajananti is brought up here. So in the 10th or the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 10, Krishna says this word as well. And it's quoted in the Bhagavatam here, and it means, at least in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it's translated as, text 11 actually, deride. So deride, and then in the Bhagavatam, word for word, it's translated as disrespect. So the idea is that someone who disrespects the Lord is condemned to fall down and lose his status as this pure servant of the Lord, where he's actually fulfilled and happy. And this is the situation we find ourselves in the material world, is that we have disrespected Krishna's position as superior and supreme, and we have fallen down into this ocean of samsara, of birth, death, old age, and disease. And we are transmigrating from body to body, not knowing what to do. And so this is the cause of that we have been this avajananti, that we've derided the Lord, we've disrespected him. And this also comes back to the idea that we always have to be engaged in some kind of activity. This is the constitutional position, or this is the nature of the living entity, is that it's very active. The soul, the spirit soul, is always wanting to do something. It has desires to do this or that. So if we are not dovetailing those desires with Krishna, again, as I was explaining, that Arjuna has to dovetail his desires with Krishna's desires and get rid of his own conceptions of what he wants in life, and dovetail that with Krishna's desires, then he'll be completely fulfilled and happy. But he could also, if he wanted to, he could ignore Krishna's desires and do his own thing, but it only leads to suffering. But there is no question of simply not taking any action at all and just being completely desireless and inactive. It's described that these yogis that try to merge into the impersonal Brahman and into this Brahmajyoti that's described here in the purport, the effulgence emanating from the body of Krishna, they may attain that state for some time, but it's simply a temporary designation, because the constitutional position, the nature of the soul is, again, to be active and have these desires. So, if you're not rendering service to the Lord and you're neglecting your duty, you will certainly fall down from your constitutional position, because in that situation you will be filled with other desires, material desires to fill your own desires for sense gratification, to gratify your own senses, to make yourself happy, to be selfish. So we can choose whichever path we like, but it's pretty easy to see and logical to see that the devotees who are acting in this pure way, that are trying to always engage in devotional service sincerely and endeavoring with enthusiasm, they are, much more blissful than the karmis that you see on the street that are simply acting for their own sense gratification. And we can also taste it for ourselves just by simply engaging in a little bit of devotional service. We can immediately taste that this is much different from anything we've done before. All the years we've spent chasing after sense gratification that led us to this feeling of emptiness and not quite being happy ever. There's maybe moments of happiness, but they always go away. This is quickly replaced by a much different feeling, and a feeling of certainty, a feeling of faith in the Lord, and a feeling of happiness, and feeling like you finally reached your constitutional position, that you're on the path that's going to lead you to ultimate happiness. As we say, our future is very bright, and as aspiring devotees, there's always, guaranteed to be ever more blissful and more, ecstatic, and, we'll continue to associate with devotees and, just continue to become more close to Krishna and learn more about Krishna and develop more and more taste for hearing about him and his pastimes, and for seeing the form of him in the temple and chanting his holy names and all these different things. These things develop over time and we get taste for it. So moving on a little bit to, again, Prabhupada is really just stressing this idea of bhajanti, this service aspect of bhakti. It's not only this worship. And he's stressing that bhajanti is only applicable to the Supreme Lord, whereas the word worship can be applied to demigods or to any other common living entity. So, again, this is one thing I was thinking about when I read this, that, bhajanti again means rendering service. Of course, it's transcendental loving service. But if you tell someone that actually you can only serve Krishna, you can't actually serve anything else, it might be confusing to people, because people might say, well, I can serve my family, I can serve my countrymen, I can serve my species, I can serve the whole planet, all the living entities on the planet, whatever, I can serve the whales, this and that. But ultimately, the inclination of the soul to render this service, which is inherent in all of us, the root of that inclination, the source of that inclination is our desire to serve Krishna. So all of these ideas of service in the material world are simply a reflection of the true nature of service, which is our position of service to Krishna. And this is an eternal position. It's not based on this temporary bodily platform, this temporary bodily designation that we all are under, this material nature that, makes me think this is my brother, this is my father, this is my son, this is my countryman, this is my, fellow inhabitant of earth, so on and so forth. So by rendering service to Krishna, there's no loss or diminution, and this service continues to increase life after life. Even if we're not able to get free of the material entanglement in this life alone, we're guaranteed that, again, as it's been stated in a couple of verses before this, that we will get a favorable position, we'll get a favorable birth to take up Krishna consciousness where we left off. So there's no need to have any kind of fear in this endeavor. It's only bright things in the future for us. And so Prabhupada is explaining here that these fools and rascals take it upon themselves to write these commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita without this attitude of service, this attitude of bhajanti. And they're simply observing it from a cold and academic standpoint of simply trying to read the text of the Bhagavad Gita without actually understanding the proper mood in which to study it and read it, and without understanding that the message that is being spoken is very clear. It's repeated so many times. It's simply engage in this service, engage in devotional service to me, Krishna is saying. But the academics and the impersonalists and such, they will simply write commentaries, without this idea that even that Krishna is a person, and without the idea that we have to render service unto him, even though it's very clearly stated so many times. And the analogy that I really connect with this is the idea of the honey, the bottle of honey. So these people that are doing this are simply like people that might have a bottle of honey and they want to understand the honey. So what they do instead of, I'll start it with saying what the devotee does is they pour out the honey and they taste it. And immediately they're able to understand the nature of the honey. They'll understand, everything they need to know about it. Whereas these fools and rascals that are writing this commentary without this attitude of service, that are simply trying to break it down in a scholarly way, they're as if they're observing the honey bottle and they're describing exactly what it looks like. They're saying, okay, well, honey is golden and it's, very not viscous. Is that what's called? Viscous, right? It's not very viscous. It's sticky, and they might even feel it and see, okay, it's very sticky. Okay, and they see like ants are coming towards it. It's attracting ants. So they'll have all these ideas of it, but they won't actually understand what it is until they put it in their mouth and taste it. So the devotee skips all of that nonsense and simply actually tastes the honey instead of licking the outside of the bottle, as it's said. And so Krishna is describing, this is the culmination of all kinds of yoga practices, this bhakti yoga. You go through this path you start at karma yoga. This is, acting and giving all the fruits of your action to the Lord. And then, karma yoga without fruitive results is the beginning of this path. So you're still acting in normal life, and then you're giving your fruits to the Lord. And then the next stage after that's jnana yoga, where you're inquiring and you're speculating mentally on the nature of the Lord, using your own small intelligence to try to understand the Lord in that way. And then from there on, it's ashtanga yoga, where you're engaged in these different physical processes like pranayama and such. And then after that point, when you're meditating on the super soul, on the Paramatma, you come to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, and this is Bhakti Yoga, and this is the topmost. This is the ultimate goal, as Prabhupada is saying. And so the yogi who is progressive is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. One who sticks to a single point and doesn't make progress is called by that particular name. So the entire point of this that he's making here is that we shouldn't engage in this process in that way for a few reasons. One is that it takes much longer to go through all these different stages, karma, jnana, ashtanga, and then bhakti. It can take many, many lifetimes, actually. And the entire point of Prabhupada coming and giving us this knowledge, coming to the West and translating these books for us, is that we can come directly to this platform of bhakti from the start. We don't have to go through all of this for lifetimes and lifetimes. And as Prabhupada stated and promised, that we can actually, by engaging fully in this process and fully dedicating ourselves to it, we can be guaranteed to go back to Godhead in this life. So it's not something that takes many, many lifetimes. It takes one lifetime of full commitment, full sinned. So we go all into Krishna consciousness and engage in this path of bhakti. And as Krishna is saying, this is the topmost yogi, and they're most intimately connected to him. So let's see, there's a lot more. It is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of bhakti yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. Again, this is a point that Chandanacharya Prabhu made a couple weeks ago, but this stuck out to me when Prabhupada says, it is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness. So this is the point that's very important to understand, is that it's not by any of our own endeavor. It's not that we have engaged in these different processes in a previous life and gotten a favorable birth and in a family of devotees or anything like that. I mean, Chandan, you kind of did, but pretty much nobody here was born to devotees and exposed to Krishna consciousness from a young age. But Prabhupada said, again, he very clearly and strongly stated this when one of his disciples asked him one time. I'm not sure exactly what they asked, but they said, what did we do to deserve this? How did we come to this platform? We must have, done something very nice. We have good karma for this, right? We're so sinful. Oh, he said we're so sinful. How did we? How can we take the devotional service? What fortune do we have, right? Okay. And then so Prabhupada said, I have created your good fortune. You didn't have any good fortune before. You were born in this Malecha country, and there was no chance of hearing the holy names. There's no chance of meeting a pure devotee. And then Prabhupada came all alone with nothing to his name, no money, nothing. Didn't know anybody, barely. His accent was so strong that many people couldn't even understand him. He was 70 years old. He had multiple heart attacks on the way over, and despite all of that, he, with faith and determination, he endeavored to fulfill the orders of his spiritual master and spread this knowledge to the West, and he created our good fortune. So it's by the fortune of the devotees that we are able to engage in this process. So we should always keep that in mind, that it's nothing of our own endeavor or our own effort that has brought us to this platform. So we should be, very humble in that way. Trinadapi Sunichena. We should always remember that, we come from very fallen backgrounds. Mahots Prabhu says, I don't know if he's quoting someone else, but he says, you should never forget the brothel that you fell out of. So we should always remember, our fallen backgrounds, and that we have no qualification for engaging in this devotional service. But by the mercy of the Lord and the devotees, we're able to be here in this amazing facility and engage day in and day out in this process and make advancement along this path. And then Prabhupada goes on to explain, describe, the beauty of Krishna. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who's called Shamasundar, beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garlanded. And so this is another thing we can meditate upon every day, is that we just come to Mangal Arti and come to all the services, Darshan Arti, and we can meditate on the beautiful forms of the Lord. And, this is more proof that this is not a material process, is because you can come up here every day for years and years, and every day, these pictures will become more and more beautiful to your eyes if you are engaging in this process. You'll see things in the pictures you didn't see before, and you'll feel more and more, happiness just simply drinking the image of the Lord in with your eyes, the nectar of the image of the Lord, and letting the Lord see you. So meditating on these different aspects of the Lord, His lotus-like face, His beautiful eyes. We sing every morning, Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visheshashobham. His unique loveliness, Visheshashobham, is charming millions of cupids. We're all, have had the experience of being charmed by Cupid ourselves. And that's just one Cupid. So imagine the beauty that's required to charm millions of Cupids, that Cupid is the one that's charming us. And it's so powerful, he's so powerful already. So this, his unique loveliness is charming millions of Cupids. It's a really nice one to meditate on, at least in my experience. And then, again, Prabhupada is just kind of emphasizing here at the end that this stage of highest perfection can only be attained by bhakti yoga. It's confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Yasya devi para bhaktir yata devi tatagaro tasya te katita hyarta prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. And this is just directly, it's the flip side of this other verse, Ashadadana Purusha Dharmashasya Parantapa, Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Sangsaravartmani, that those who lack the faith in this devotional service, all they attain as a result of this is simply repeated birth and death in this material world. So that's the fate of someone who is lacking faith, and as we were saying before, this avajananti, this someone who is deriding the Lord, who is disrespecting the Lord, someone who has no faith in the Lord. Their fate is to be thrown into the lower forms of life and suffer in this material world for indefinitely. But the opposite side of that is the one who has faith in the Lord and the spiritual master. They gets this most amazing treasure that all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed to them. And this is the highest, level that we can come to, because when all these imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed, we are able to receive this fruit of love of God. Because by understanding the imports of Vedic knowledge, we'll understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and by completely engaging in His service, always thinking of Him, always endeavoring to serve Him and hold Him within your heart and think of Him at every moment, this is how we find ultimate fulfillment and happiness in life, and ultimately get out of this material world forever and go back to Godhead. So there's a couple other things at the end he says here, but I'm going to wrap it up here. If there's any questions or comments, corrections, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, this is really, Prabhupada hits on this a lot in different places also. Just specifically against the Mayavadis, because the Mayavadis often make the point that jnana is higher.
Yeah.
But here it's specifically emphasized by Krishna that person who is a bhakti yogi is on the highest platform of transcendence. There's nothing higher to do. And even Krishna makes the point again in the 12th chapter that path of jnana, mental speculation, is very troublesome.
Yeah.
So again and again, and then in the end of 9th chapter, he mentions that that always think of me, always remember me, offer your obeisance unto me.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, whatever you eat, you offer that unto me. And then again at that point, that same verse comes again later in the 18th chapter of manvana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. So and then again, so it just keeps being emphasized again and again and again. But somehow or other, the Mayavadis are able to take that, and somehow they come to the conclusion of that jnana is higher, because they say, well, Krishna says, well, jnana is really tough, so hard things in life give you a better result. Although Krishna is already stating here that in the 12th chapter, he's saying it's very troublesome, means don't do it. Actually, the highest thing is one who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. That path is very joyfully performed. It makes the point in the 9th chapter. So it's like when that consistency of bhakti yoga as being the topmost supreme platform of transcendence is there, and the Mayavadis take that and they turn it, and people accept that, they find actually that it's not so relishable. That the path of liberation, or trying to come to the platform of self-realization, is actually really troublesome. Everybody struggles. It's like, oh my God, nobody really understands what it is. It's like neti, not this, not that, not this, not that. But Bhakti Yoga, the platform of Krishna consciousness, makes it very clear. Just like when people read Prabhupada's books before, when people read these Bhagavad Gita before Prabhupada came, it was so confusing. What is this saying? Is Krishna a person? Is he some vague light, vague being? But he's talking about devotional service. Who is that devotion to? And then they say, well, the devotion is to yourself because you're Krishna, but hang on a sec, I've been trying to serve myself in my whole life. So it's just like confusing. It's like you don't really get anywhere. You just run in circles because you come to the conclusion, well, I'm God and I should serve myself, but you've been already doing that your whole life, and nobody's self-realized like that.
Right.
So it's just like this is a really important verse, and Prabhupada just hits.
Big time.
He summarizes the whole chapter up in this purport, and specifically talking about it by great fortune, like we've mentioned this so many times, to have the great fortune to get the Bhagavad Gita as it is, to get the devotees of the Lord as they are, not some pseudo spiritualists. So, and then quoting that specific verse, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tatha Guru Tasyaite Katitahi Artha Prakashanti Mahatmana, unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, are all the imports of the Vedic knowledge automatically revealed.
Yeah.
So it's just like amazing. One just
That's
simply has
amazing.
to have faith in the spiritual master and Krishna. So a lot of the time, actually, the spiritual master is more emphasized than Krishna, because the spiritual master gives us Krishna. So very, anyways, it's such an amazing purport.
Yeah, you're talking about this impersonalist that try to twist the Bhagavad Gita. There's this guy that commented on one of our videos, he quoted this verse before. The yogi is greater than the ascetic, great in all circumstances, be a yogi. It's that's why I'm practicing this jnana yoga. And then I just told him, I just responded did you read the next verse? The verse right after that just completely defeats you, shows that we're right, Out of all of those people, this is the highest way to do it. So they just ignore.
Yeah, they don't want to surrender to Krishna.
Yeah, definitely.
They don't want to have to do anything with that.
Okay, anything else? Avadut Prabhu?
Yeah, it's just amazing. Prabhupada's writings. I'm reading this small book of Prabhupada having a conversation with John Lennon, George and Harrison and Yoko Ono, and they're asking him different questions about the philosophy, but Prabhupada's explanation is so expert, because whatever smoke and mirrors the Beatles were, everyone thought that they had the best thing, and then here they come before a bona fide spiritual master, and all their doubt, the questions they're asking are just Prabhupada is, such a high position, it's amazing. But he's saying, there's been over 600 different editions of the Bhagavad Gita like that. And John was even saying the same thing, how do we know which one to read? But Chandan was making this point about all these impersonalists, the commentaries, and Prabhupada's purports. I think that statement you made, Mahotsa Prabhu quotes that often. That's actually from Prabhupada, where he says, we can't forget the brothel we've fallen out of. I think that's in the Bhagavatam somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I thought you were sharing the story that Chandanacharya Prabhu told a week ago or something like that about Prabhupada being on the Vyasasan, and someone was asking, and Prabhupada chastises his disciple. He says, are you not reading the Bhagavad Gita? He says, one moment, you be Krishna conscious.
Yeah.
I thought you were referring to that story, but as far as the story about creating, Prabhupada always says that I create your good fortune. I don't know the context of that story, but
Yeah.
that's why I stopped, because I thought you were explaining this other story.
Oh, no.
Because the devotee, I don't know if, anyways, I don't think it was Vishnu John Swami, but there's a devotee in the audience who asked Prabhupada, like, how can we do it? Because,
It takes so long, yeah.
yeah. But I'd like to see the context of this good fortune statement,
Yeah.
because there's probably more to it.
The other good point of that there's so many Bhagavad Gitas, like 600 or whatever, and 600 versions of the Bhagavad Gita made 0 devotees, and then Prabhupada's one version made so many thousands all over the world, temples everywhere. It shows you the potency of the actual message,
This was stated in 1969, so who knows how many are 2024.
Yeah,
There's probably
yeah,
like
good
over
point.
1,000 versions of the Gita now.
Yeah.
A good fortune.
Charandeep? No? Anything else from the men? Mataji's? No? Okay. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Panchakalpadribhyascha